What if I told you you could turn this enemy army into this enemy army with one simple tactic? How, Zerk, how? Well, I'm glad you asked. One thing we need to understand is that when you face an enemy army and it has a lot of missiles or artillery or any kind of ranged, that army becomes somewhat reliant on those ranged units to do damage and make themselves useful. If they can't, it's probably game over. Missile units like these are incredibly powerful. They can be good against literally every type of enemy. But of course their strength stems from the missile attack, the missile strength, the range, the ammunition, because their melee combat stats are next to useless. Melee attack, melee defense, weapon strength is pretty much nothing, and they are going to do very little in melee. So from all this we can deduce that the ammo, the little orange bar above the unit, is absolutely essential to this unit's success. As long as it uses its ammo on good targets, it will be very powerful and do a lot of work for the army. If it can't manage to use its ammo, we end up with this situation where these units basically can't do anything at all, so it's like they're not even there. In melee, they'll do virtually nothing. They really rely on that ammunition so much that if we can stop them using the ammunition, well, you end up fighting an army that essentially looks like this, which I'm sure any army commander will find most pleasing. So, from Empire handgunners to Dwarf Iron Drakes, High Elf Archers, Skaven Jezzails, Dark Elf Repeater Crossbows, Cathayan Fire Rain Rocket Artillery, these units are pretty much next to useless if they cannot use their ammunition. But of course there are some units that are better in melee, like Shades. They've got a very strong missile attack and they can do a bit of work in melee. The same goes for Ice Guard, for Kislev, the Ushabti Great Bows for the Tomb Kings, a Bastiladon Solar Engine for the Lizard Men, but the tactic still applies. If you take away their very strong missile attack, they're going to be far less useful than they would be otherwise. But these kind of units, hybrid units, can still do some work in melee. So for all these ranged heavy factions that rely a lot on their missile units to win the battles and do the work for them, you may find armies of theirs with half an army of ranged units and artillery. And if you can stop that army from using all of that ammo that it has on all of its units, you'll find the army very easy to deal with, which makes this tactic of preventing the enemy from using its ammo imperative for these kind of rush factions. They tend to share common problems when dealing with ranged heavy factions, such as low leadership, which will see them routed before they even reach the fight, low armor, which means missiles will do more damage, perhaps a lack of shields, which means missiles will do more damage. Their large units can be easily dealt with by all those missiles, so it's pretty imperative for these kind of rushy factions to employ this tactic of disrupting enemy missiles and stopping them from using their ammo. So how do we achieve this? Well, there's a few different ways and a few different options that we can choose. One of the simplest is using things like doggos, which are literally born to chase down missile units and getting them after those missile units, because the AI likes to leave its missile units on skirmish, and as you can see, they will run away, and that is stopping them from using their ammo, and that's all we want. We don't necessarily even want to kill them, we just want to stop them using their ammo until somebody else can kill them. So you see, by pushing these units and stopping them from firing constantly, we're taking control of the enemy missile units, and that's the key. Control the enemy ranged units. If you let them shoot what they want, when they want, and use up all their ammunition, they are going to do a lot of damage to your army. So that's all we got to do. Disrupt the missiles, stop them from firing, same with artillery, same with skirmish cav. Keep it from using its ammo, and it will be much less efficient, near useless potentially, than it would otherwise be. The tools for this tactic, as I say, doggo units are literally built for this. They're one of the best choices, very fast, very agile, and they can munch down lightly armored archers, no problem. Heavier stuff might be a bit more of a challenge, but they can still disrupt them, if not kill them. Another great option is, of course, flying units that can go right over any enemy defenses and get straight after those missile units. Some may be faster, like the Furies, or stronger, like the Plague Drones. Hell, you can even use single entities to disrupt and get after missiles as well. Really, anything will do, as long as it's got some speed to not get shot up by the missiles on the way there. Of course, cavalry is also great for this. A lot of them are built for this job as well. Light melee cavalry, even skirmish cavalry could go and do this job if it has to. Not great for it, but still, it's an option. Better than those missile units shooting up the rest of your army. But obviously, big heavy cavalry can be great for this. Even though they might be a bit slower to reach the missiles, they can do a lot of damage and take those missile units out very quickly. So whichever faction you're playing, except for maybe dwarfs, there's usually a tool to be able to push missiles and disrupt them. But do understand, there's an element of timing involved. You can't just rush your disrupting units in far too early, because they'll just get killed, and then the enemy will still be able to shoot the rest of your army. So position your missile disrupting units at the flank or rear of the enemy army. Pretty much when the bulk of your army comes in range of most of the enemy missiles, this is the time to strike with your missile disrupting units. This will allow them to disrupt most efficiently and protect the rest of your army, allowing them to come up and finish the job that the disrupting units started. Now, allow me to give a few demonstrations of this in action. Here I've got a Greenskins army. I'm pushing the flanks with some cavalry on both sides. And there's about 5 enemy missile units in this army, 2 handguns, 2 crossbows, and the silver bullets, so a lot of damage potential against my army. But only if we let them use their ammo, right? And I'm pushing pretty heavy on my left side, starting to get round behind them. Got some resistance from some enemy cavalry, but still I've got a unit that's managed to sneak through, and I can use that to start disrupting. They're going to turn around to face me and potentially start shooting me, but this is good in a way, this unit as well, it's turning around, because this means they're not facing the other way. Like I mentioned, we want to draw the enemy away from shooting these units. Because very often you'll have that strong infantry on the front line and you don't want it to get blasted to pieces before it even reaches the battle. See, this unit has the potential to do some damage to my orc boys and make them much less useful when they arrive at the front line. On the right hand side of my army, I've got the mangy marauders, a skirmish cav coming into melee. Not ideal for them as a skirmish cav. Fighting in melee is not their strength, but they're stopping 2 enemy missile units from firing, and that's a lot of damage that they're probably saving. But you can see all my cavalry knocking around is constantly pushing these missile units, stopping them from really using any of their ammo. And by the time we get to the end of the fight, we can notice that none of these units have really used any of their ammo. This crossbow unit, pretty much full ammo. These handgunners, pretty much full ammo. These handgunners, pretty much full ammo. Silver bullets, full ammo. Other crossbows, full ammo. You get the idea. In some situations, you may not really have enough disrupting units to get the job done effectively. Like here as Norska, I've only really got this 1 unit of doggos. I've got some skirmish cav as well, but the doggos can still do a lot of work. Even though against Cathay here, there's a lot of missiles, but as long as I can push them around and disrupt them, I can just buy time until my other units arrive to help me out, such as the skin wolves. So I bring my doggo unit in, just trying to disrupt as much as I can, trying to get it to just touch as many missile units as it can to stop their formation from being able to fire. You see I've got my skin wolves into these iron hail gunners, and I'm just putting pressure all over the enemy army, stopping those missiles from firing, stopping the artillery from firing, and just basically taking away half of the Cathayan army, because these units are all pretty rubbish in melee, so this army is basically doomed not being able to use its ammunition. One more example here, this time with some flyers. We've got some Furies, which are very fast, can just go straight over the top of the enemy and into those missiles. I've also got some Flesh Doggos. These are a bit stronger than normal Warhounds, so some really nice disrupting, powerful units. And this tactic doesn't just apply to rush factions. Even if you're playing one of the ranged heavy factions, you can still pull off these same tactics. So even if you're playing as the Empire, as Cathay, as the Wood Elves, whoever, you can still push and disrupt enemy missiles in the same way that the enemy might do to you. Another important thing to think about when attacking enemy missile units is to prioritize them by how dangerous and strong they are. In this case, the Sisters of Avalon are a very powerful, dangerous missile unit, so disrupting them and stopping them from using their ammunition should be a priority over maybe these normal crappy light archers. But the beauty of these things like Furies, they can disrupt multiple units quite easily. They can bounce around between 2 or 3 units that are close to each other and just kind of disrupt them all and stop them all from settling down to fire. As I say, it's not always about trying to kill the enemy missiles instantly. It's sometimes just about stopping them from firing and just buying time until some of your other units can come over to help you. Your cavalry, your monstrous infantry, whoever. And you can see here now, these Sisters of Avalon have managed to beat away the Furies that I had attacking them before, and now they're starting to fire, so I'm going to get my other Furies on them. They're about to die as well, but the Doggos have arrived too, so we're keeping those Sisters of Avalon in check, controlling these missiles, and really weakening what the enemy can do with their army. Now when it comes to dealing with skirmish cav, they can be a little more difficult because they can generally get themselves out of trouble and you won't be able to get a hold of them. In many cases, you'll have a unit that's slower than the skirmish cav, like these Forest Goblin Spider Riders. They're slower than these Grenade Outriders, so they'll be able to outrun us. But the important detail with Grenade Outriders is that they can only fire in one direction at a time. They don't fire 360 and won't shoot you when they're running away, so we can just keep chasing them to the end of the earth. Whereas something like Pistoliers that can keep damage us while we're chasing them are a bit more of a trouble. So you want to use something cheap, maybe something expendable, and especially something with shields so that we can waste the Pistolier ammo. That's what it's all about. Making them use their precious ammo on our cheap crappy units we don't care about, rather than our expensive units that we do care about. We don't want to chase them down with expensive cavalry, for example. This is another form of controlling the enemy ranged by making them use their ammo where we want them to use it, rather than where they want to use it. And the same thing applies with any kind of skirmish unit, whether it's infantry, cavalry, chariots, flying units. Make them waste their ammo on your unimportant units. And the last few useful things to know, ammo is directly tied to the models in the unit. So if you kill a model in a unit, you take away that ammo, and thus the unit will have less damage potential. So if you kill half of an enemy missile unit, it's not like they pick up their dead friend's ammo and then use that. The ammo is just gone. Even though the bar stays full and it makes it look like they've still got the same amount of ammo, they've actually got less. So there's benefit to killing models and missile units to make them much less efficient. Which ties into my next point, as a means of disrupting enemy missile units, magic can also be great for this too. Breath spells, wind spells, anything that kind of knocks the unit around and stops them being able to fire is kind of the same effect as what we're trying to do pushing them around with hounds or whatever. And as I just mentioned, killing the models in a unit will take away their ammo, so magic can be good for that job too, especially important to use on those stronger units like Sisters of Avalon, for example. Summons are another great way to disrupt missile units. If you have a lord or hero that can summon up some kind of unit, and you can get close enough without being blasted to pieces to drop them behind the enemy line to start messing with all the missiles, that's another great way of disrupting enemy missile units. And lastly, try to just get yourself in the habit of looking at the enemy army before you actually start to engage them in battle, see how many missiles and artillery units they've got, and simply ask yourself the question, how am I going to disrupt all these missiles? Because very often if you can control the enemy ranged core, you can easily win a battle. So there we go, the power of missile disruption and why you need to learn this tactic if you want to be an effective Total War player. I hope you've enjoyed this, thanks for watching, I will see you in the future.